Okay, it's 7 p.m. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. Welcome, Perla, as well. Perla is in Italy. I'm in Avalon, Glastonbury at the moment. And tonight's talk is going to be about the Shekinah, very much inspired by some experiences that the both of us had in Jerusalem when we went to Israel, Palestine, Jerusalem last year in June. And it really clarified and awakened a lot around the topic of the Shekinah. So that's what we'll be sharing. Since then, we've been using sacred chant as a practice, as a portal to connect to the energy of the Shekinah. But we'll go into all of that during our sharing. We'll start, however, by setting the space, because we're going to talk about the Holy Spirit. So we're going to set a sacred space as well. So I'm going to invite everyone to take a moment to close your eyes and take some deep breaths and really allow just the energies of the day to descend. Just take some calm and easy breaths and allow yourself through the breath to really come into the body. Allow yourself to feel that you're fully present here and now in the space that you're in. Feel that you are fully connected to your heart. And you can feel yourself dropping into an inner sacred space. A space where all the outside noise is tuned out and you are fully connected to your own energy, your own presence. From this space, we call in the wheel of the Magdalenes, a wheel of protection, a wheel of connection and of sacred space around all of us, around our circle. We start in the north by calling in the sacred guardian of the earth element, Anna. May she fully connect us to our roots, to the divine lineage and heritage of the Shekinah. May we tune into her ancient wisdom and remember her presence in our roots, in our lineage. Clarify and hear her voice through the sacred sites of this earth, the messengers of the earth.
And in the east, honoring and invoking the element of air and space, and calling upon Isis. May she guide us in honoring this journey, in transforming our negativity towards ourselves, towards others, into the highest, by recognizing the power of our word and our thoughts. May she help us to recognize the union that exists within us, the union of polarities, masculine and feminine, so that we can hold pillars for the sacred as we walk this journey. And
In
may
the
she...
south, we call in, we invite in the energy of Mary Magdalene, guardian of the fire element. May she awaken and give space to the fire of the spirit within. May she allow us to deeply tune into what makes us feel alive and give time and space to that. Make it a priority. May our own fire inspire and ignite the fire in others.
And in the West, recognizing and placing the element of water. May we bless these waters to purify us, the waters on the earth to purify us and cleanse us and help us see clearly. We call upon Mother Mary and we honor the space that she holds of infinite love and knowing for us to evolve and receive and remember. And may she help us connect to the truest, deepest guidance of our heart and give us the courage to operate from there. And may she help us be like the water, alive with our life force present and able to flow through and around blocks that appear.
Amen.
Mm.
These guardians placed around us. We will now 3 times say this sacred prayer. You can keep your eyes closed or you can read it. It's in the chat. Say it aloud with us. Shalom lach Miriam, Miriat HaChesed, Adonai imach, Brucha ad banashim, uvaru peribinech, Yerushalayim. Shalom lach Miriam, Miriat HaChesed, Adonai imach, Brucha ad banashim, uvaru peribinech, Yerushalayim. Shalom lach Miriam, Miriat HaChesed, Adonai imach, Brucha ad banashim, uvaru peribinech, Yerushalayim. Awin.
Amen.
You can open your eyes and enter into the space, enter into the circle. Welcome everyone. Welcome everyone who's just joined and tuning in. So a word before we start on the prayer that we said to close our circle. The prayer is the Ave Maria prayer or the Hail Mary in Hebrew. It's the first part of the Hail Mary, which is the part that I use most often to invoke Mary. And the last word, instead of Yeshua, we chose the word Yerushalayim, Jerusalem. So one of the Hebrew pronunciations for Jerusalem, because we're going to talk about Jerusalem as well as a symbolical space, more so than a physical space, and as a term that has been used to signify a spiritual realm, a spiritual space, not only on this planet, but within, above all. And this is, of course, very connected to the theme of the Shekinah. So, welcome, everyone. So what inspired us to share about the Shekinah and the Shekinah in Jerusalem? Well, for both of us, I'll share some words, and then Perla, you can share some words about what it means to you. But I'm on the path of Mary Magdalene, of course. I've been in Avalon for the past 7 years. I've been initiated by Mary Magdalene into her spiritual path. And if you're on a path with Mary Magdalene, a spiritual path, a path of purification, a path of expansion, and this expansion is more so than a spiritual expansion, is, I feel, an expansion of the heart, and an expansion of love and of the light of the heart, then at some point, necessarily, you will meet the Shekinah. She is part of this path. the Shekinah, we'll go into what it means for us as well, but she is the essence of what makes us feel alive and what connects us to God as well. The God essence within, if you will. So this was energy for me, was very strongly awakened, activated through the connection with Mary Magdalene and through the devotional path with Mary Magdalene. Many of the true, authentic goddess paths, just like a true devotion to Yeshua, for me, will always awaken the energy of the Shekinah. And at some point we meet her, and it's this fire energy within that is very much also associated with Mary Magdalene. We went on a trip, Perla, and with two other Magdalene sisters, Astrid and Anna, to Israel and Jerusalem last year in the month of June, and it really clarified a lot of things about this energy. How she is alive, how she's really the undercurrent of different spaces. She was very, very present in the city of Jerusalem, so the physical, earthly Jerusalem, even if at some places you have to go under certain layers. But that is what the Shekinah really does and what she really is. She connects us to the truth of all things. So beyond the visible, beyond the illusion, the truth of the spirit within us, but also without us. So it's really this trip that inspired and that clarified a lot of things around her and what this energy represents. What was it for you, Perla? I know that, of course, the trip was part of it.
Yeah, so for me, well, I grew up in Jerusalem, a big part of my childhood. And that was very complex for me. It wasn't an easy place for me. It wasn't a place that I felt particularly connected to when I was a child. But I did go to school there. I did pray there. And, you know, it was very much a part of my everyday life. I met Mary Magdalene probably actually the first time 11 years ago in Avalon by chance in a yoga retreat. And growing up Jewish, I hardly knew who she was and couldn't really understand the experience at the time. And 6 years later, I met Anaïs, and through her got initiated into the path of Mary Magdalene. And that was a real kind of eye-opening, awakening experience for me. And one of the strongest, I resonate with everything that Anaïs has stated about the path of the heart and this opening and a real expansion in how I began to perceive life and my engagements with it. And one of the biggest things that occurred is this understanding of beyond the form, is the recognition of how locked I was, or we are, moving between forms. And there's something that is so constantly present and so all-encompassing. There is a communication that I started to recognize, but it was so present and so everywhere, almost in every breath, that it almost could be missed completely. And, you know, where our mind is used to going, moving through these forms, it could be considered a dream or a moment, or, you know, it kept kind of speaking in some way. First in Avalon, and then when I came back home to Italy, in nature. And then eventually when we went to Israel together, which was for me a very transformative trip and really shifted my relationship with Jerusalem and with Israel. There she was in the streets of modern Jerusalem. But more so when we went and visited the sacred sites of all religions, which for me, some of these places, having even lived there for 18 years, were a first. There were some places that I just didn't go to, again, part of these forms that were just established as reality. touching the stones over there and moving through these sites, I was really taken. I was really taken to a place where the only way I can describe it is that remembrance was possible. There was a familiarity and there was an understanding that stood there way beyond and way before any story of culture and present language even. It was, the feeling was so clear. And following that experience, I started to receive and remember experiences from childhood, walking through the streets of Jerusalem, and how there was this place of refuge. Jerusalem, for those of you who have been or will be, and we've experienced it, is a very polarized place. And modern Jerusalem is a very polarized place. And I remember walking there, and it also felt to me very, very masculine as well. The streets were masculine, God was masculine. Men were quite intimidating and determined the state in which I walked through the street. And there was something missing, you know, and at the same time, you would feel truth is very available there. You cannot escape the truth in Jerusalem. So everything is very available. So there was a place of refuge where there was almost a memory, a breath, a caress, a holding that held so much more. And I guess the battle of my life up until this point, which is why I feel so passionately about sharing it, is that there was this inner battle that does not allowed, almost that doesn't align to the tangible proof of life that was expected almost. I'm not sure if I'm finding the right words, but that was the feeling. And over time, through the path of the Magdalene, as I began to recognize my relationship with it, but continued my inner battle, there were actual physical experiences to that. And that made me feel quite strongly that it is important to share and open, because the physical experiences and the battle comes from us. The presence is very available and communicates constantly. That's where I meet you.
Perla. So that, I think that takes us to really, what is the Shekinah? So if she has such a powerful presence and a powerful effect on the both of us and in our lives, what is she? Or at least how does she show up for each of us? Well, I think we can start with the name Shekinah, what she means, and you will correct me because your Hebrew, of course, is far better than mine. Shekinah means dwelling place. So it's this idea of dwelling within. The spirit that dwells within. So it's contained within a place, but it's beyond the space. It's the form and the formless. So it's most commonly people describe it as the Holy Spirit that resides in a holy place, like the energy that you feel. And this is one of the first, I think, ways in which you can recognize her when we enter into a holy space, like a temple space or a place in nature that is so pure, where you feel this energy, you feel another quality in the air, another energy that envelops you, that surrounds you, and that immediately connects you to what is real, what is holy, what is sacred, and what is alive. That is one way in which to understand the Shekinah. For me, the Shekinah and the Holy Spirit are the same. In Catholic tradition today, the Holy Spirit is masculine. But as I like to say to all the Magdalenes, in the beginning, she was feminine. The Holy Spirit has always been feminine. And so the Holy Trinity had a feminine aspect in it, because it's the life-giving principle, masculine, feminine, and a child is born from the union of both. So she is the feminine God aspect, the breath of life. The breath of Isis that brings Osiris back to life is the Shekinah. Very much associated to the fire element, with the fire element, this flamboyance, this sacred fire that we can feel when we are experiencing a transcendent moment, the clarity of the fire of the spirit that comes through. That to me is the Shekinah. What's it for you? How would you describe it, going off your experiences as well?
So before that, I'll just say that it's important to mention that Shekinah in Hebrew does mean to dwell, but it's a feminine word. So everything that ends with in Hebrew, it is a feminine word. So it's not, we're not inventing this kind of feminine aspect. It's in the word itself. So that's important. So it's almost like she who resides, she who dwells. It's if I had to kind of literally translate it. And so that feels quite meaningful. And to me, so I resonate very much with how you described it. And it really is, to me, spirit in how it is available to be felt in the embodied world. In addition to that, so people say sometimes, particularly in Jewish kind of interpretation, people say it's the feminine aspect of God. To me, yes, it's the feminine aspect of God, but it is the energy that demonstrates the oneness of both, that guides us to recognize that there is feminine, masculine in that presence, that it's not one or the other, but that both are there. To me, that is what Shekinah kind of carries, is the knowing, this kind of knowing of both existence. And I feel that, and very much so because of the feminine aspect that must be recognized there, it is an energy that creates with you and through you. And as it's recognized, we become the creator of the world as a temple for the presence. So it's kind of a very holistic relationship. Yeah, and as we recognize her, we are able to place that with our presence as well, to place that creation of the temple.
Definitely. And one of those temple spaces on our planet, in our world, is Jerusalem, but Jerusalem represents so much more as a symbol than just the physical place. Maybe you have a long history with Jerusalem, so maybe you can share some words on what for you the difference is between the physical place, the spiritual place, and maybe also Jerusalem as a concept and as a vehicle as well of the Shekinah.
Yeah. So I believe, I mean, Jerusalem, I think things are changing now in terms of how certain places hold the sacred or represent the sacred. I think we're moving into a space and a time where that shifts and is carried also outside of very particular spaces. But Jerusalem has very particular sites, and one of them is the site of the Holy of Holies, which all religions have built, their temples one upon the other, surrounding that. And I believe that that's a very, and in Jewish tradition, the Shekinah was only able to reside there, after it was taken away from humanity, after a series of, behaviors, let's call them, it was only able to reside there. But humanity then goes through a series of stages, like evolutions, through which it becomes more and more available. And as we take that availability responsibly, it appears more and more. And then that's when I believe that the Holy of Holies, or the Mishkan, right? There's the word Mishkan, which is where she resides, where she dwells. Lishkon means to dwell, and Mishkan is the space of dwelling. So that Mishkan gets wider and more expansive and becomes more of our world as we evolve and begin to accept. So in ancient Jerusalem, that is very, very present. There, the honoring of the Holy of Holies that has been through the generations, through the different temples that were built, is absolutely there and cannot be missed. And so when you go there, it is walking into a sacred space. It is walking into a space that has seen and received and been dwelled in through generations and through various human longings and approaches and attempts to reach that. So it's very, very present there. I think everybody knows that Old Jerusalem is really a place where there are sites for the well, for 4 different religions. And so there is also quite a lot of tension there that you can feel because of today's world and how these religions interact. And outside of the walls of the old city has evolved modern Jerusalem, which is a very modern place, a very, even particularly, I would say, consumeristic place. You know, it's a very, it aims to place something else, to prove something else, to move away from that history. Whilst at the same time, as you walk into ancient Jerusalem, it kind of gently tries to remind you of the essence, of the essence. And so there is quite a strong relationship there and quite a lot of pain. So the holy Jerusalem to me is those places, is what we felt when we started to commit to the sacred sites. It's not so much about going there, it's about offering your presence there. And when you go with an offering, right away, that information is available to you, that beyond, so that you don't have to be locked in some of the polarities that, you know, are also present there.
Thank you, Perla. Yeah, I really resonate with that. I feel the holy Jerusalem, the sacred Jerusalem is a temple space, is temple consciousness. And in Jewish mysticism, it was the Shekinah lived inside the Holy of Holies of the sacred temple. And she could only reside there. But since the destruction of the temple, it feels that she's really everywhere. And we can tune into her wherever. It's this holy inner sanctuary, like the inner kingdom within. She represents this space where we are fully connected and fully tuned into the divine. And this holy Jerusalem, interestingly, is also one of the names that has been given to Avalon and to the spiritual dimension of Avalon. There's this famous William Blake song or poem also that speaks about Avalon as the holy Jerusalem, because it's also a site where spiritual presence or spiritual energy is amplified because it is celebrated by people as well. And I think that's an important part of information, like the power places on this planet are places where the fire of the spirit and the energy of life is very present. And it is because human beings allow themselves to be in that presence and allow themselves to celebrate that divine presence. And I feel that part of the reason why in Jerusalem she is so present is because there are so many people coming there. And even if they come with a religious agenda, they open themselves up. They come expressly with the purpose to tune into the divine and to receive divine gnosis. So whenever we open ourselves up, she is there and we receive her in a way. So to me, Jerusalem is a super interesting place. I found it highly fascinating to go there and such a symbol of humanity. I mean, there's no coincidence that the main religions all have like a very holy sacred site within Jerusalem. Jerusalem is not big, it's a small city, and they're all kind of heaped on top of each other. Because it's such a symbol of humanity where we're all seeking the same thing and we're all tuning into the same thing. But we all, many of us still have the desire to define and to own and to build walls, literally, in Jerusalem between the different parts. And the Shekinah is all but that. She is the divine presence that has no borders, that has no walls. And the Holy Jerusalem to me is an inner knowing and an inner consciousness that has this consciousness of being in a world without borders. Whenever we try to exclude someone or exclude something, whenever we try to put up a wall or a barrier, we block the entrance of the Shekinah and she can no longer come in. She's this energy of flow, and the Holy Jerusalem is a temple that allows this energy to flow stronger within, for me.
Really, really agree. And as soon as we allow that circulation, it's available, she's available. And then we become part of the creation of that temple. And that was, to me, also very present in our trip.
And of course, there were some sites where we felt her presence more strongly than in others, maybe. And maybe those were the same for us, and maybe those were different. So we went to different sacred sites inside the old city of Jerusalem. And in some of those places, the Shekinah was particularly strong. And this is in spite of most of the religious structures in Jerusalem being very patriarchal and not very inviting to the feminine. So one example is the Church of the Holy Sepulchre that has a place that is called the tomb of Yeshua. It has the sacred anointment stone, which is said to have been the stone on which the body of Yeshua was anointed after his passing. It has a very powerful energy. There's really, you walk into this sanctuary, you are enveloped by an energy. So there definitely is this presence that takes you into a different state of being. And this different state of being, for me, is our true state of being, is our true selves. We are always connected to the divine. And in these spaces, this spiritual truth, but this truth of life is just revealed and amplified. But before you go into this space, there are priests checking women's attire. Men are not checked, or at least I didn't see any. Maybe some are. But women are checked if they have something on their arms, if their cleavage is not too deep, if their skirts or their short is not too short. It's very hot in Jerusalem in the summer. So of course, women wear summer clothes, but you really have to cover up when you go in those spaces. We went to different spaces. For example, Bethlehem. No, Nazareth was, I think, the worst place, where they enveloped women in some kind of plastic wrapping so that they were covered. So you kind of have to bypass all those things before you can get into those sacred sites. The thing is that the Shekinah, the presence of the Holy Spirit, the fire of the Spirit, is so powerful that she goes beyond all of this. So what it requires is for us to really silence and let go of the ego. And not go into our stories of I'm going to rebel, I'm going to make a story out of this, or I feel hurt and I stay in my wounding. But to really be in those spaces, to really sit in those spaces and allow ourselves to receive what is there beyond what we are seeing, what we are experiencing visually, and what may trigger some things within us. So it's really the capacity to go beyond what we're seeing, beyond the ego. As Perla said before, Jerusalem is a place with a lot of duality, with a lot of conflict. We know about the conflicts that are there. We know about the clash of religions, the clash of cultures. We know about the walls that are in the old city. Some of the communities from certain parts of the city don't go to other parts of the city. But beyond that, this energy circulates in all of the sites, in all of the holy sites. Another place that was really powerful to me, but I know also to the other women that accompanied us, was the monastery of Anna in the Muslim parts of the city. So this monastery was powerful because of its softness and because of its gentleness. So I'd say that the Shekinah is an energy of fire, but she can also be very gentle. She can also be very holding. And a person that is fully inhabited by this energy can show up as a sword or can show up as a rose, as softness. And the monastery of Anna in the Muslim part of the city was a monastery that showed up as a rose. It is a place that holds people, that is full of softness. Already walking into the monastery, you are welcomed by women, which is one of the only places, the only holy sites of all the religions. In all the religious places, you are ushered in by men. Men who often are not very welcoming and friendly towards women. Here, they were nuns and they were smiling, women welcoming the people in, and they were very soft and very gentle in their energy. You enter into this courtyard. There were roses planted in the courtyard. There was attention was given to beauty, natural beauty, to softness. We walked into the church and we could really feel the energy of Anna, the energy of a divine lineage in this space. I love the sign as well that was on at the entrance of the Church of Anna in the monastery that said that speaking inside the church was discouraged, but you could sing inside the church. So people were singing all the time. Groups of people were coming there and singing. And of course, we're going to get into that a little bit later. But sacred song, sacred chant is a way in which we can allow the Holy Spirit, the Shekinah, to circulate within us. Dance is another way. Everything that brings flow and movement into our being and into our life, into our bodies. So this is one of the essential things about the Shekinah and the Holy Spirit. Stagnation and rigidity will block the Shekinah from being present in your life. She is there, but you won't be able to feel her and she won't be able to work through you. So the more you are in movement, the more you are in flow, the more she can come through. So that was very present there. And of course, these sacred sites also carry the imprints of these holy people who were embodiments, who were ambassadors, who were avatars of this energy, and who really brought this consciousness of the kingdom and the holy Jerusalem, the inner Jerusalem as a temple space to humanity. So when you go to places like Jerusalem, there is a lot of conflict, there is a lot of suffering, even in the memories and in the lives of people like Mary Magdalene and Yeshua and Anna and Mary. They suffered in Jerusalem, and you can feel pain that is connected to those memories as well. But they carried really the consciousness and the fire of the Spirit, like so many other people who came to those spaces. And this is also what helps this energy to be present and what helps us tune into these places, which is also why in other holy places, in other holy sites on the planet, like Avalon, Glastonbury, this energy is particularly strong also because there are many people who live here with either the consciousness or at least the desire to cultivate this energy. Human consciousness creates openness, creates spaces in which this energy can come through. So it's very much also being open to it. That's another thing that is really important in the path of the Shekinah, is to be like cups, to be like vessels, to be open to receive this energy. So of course, if the contrary of the Shekinah is rigidity, then what allows her in is being open, being able to let go of our preconceived ideas, being able to let go of the structures that we know. So she's constantly asking us to expand, to evolve, and to allow more of reality in our experience, to love more. It's really an expansion of the heart. And so we talked about this a little bit earlier.
I think what you said is very meaningful about movement. And one of the things that I think they're little communications there, giving us almost very, very simple tools. And singing was, that invitation in the Church of Anna to sing was a very beautiful one. And as we're going to share, has started a real journey for us. And the other thing that I felt was very strong was the walking. So we had probably gone back and forth through the different parts of the old city a number of times. And that was a way of being held to move. It was a real metaphor. It was a real showing of moving through the layers and not being attached to one. And when we attach to one, we start to engage with that, and that becomes a complete reality. And through that movement and through, for me, it was one of the biggest teachings I received in Israel was not to attach to that level. I had come after 18 years of a fixed relationship and idea to Jerusalem. And as we started walking back and forth over probably 3 days, and I was walking a lot through modern Jerusalem as well, getting cars, and those layers began to reveal themselves. And the teaching was, do not attach to the one layer and make it your reality, but wait. And then that's when we were taken to a much deeper knowledge, a much deeper knowing. That was where the freedom lay. That's where there was a showing of the possibility that lied beyond the polarity. And the other thing that you said about recognizing when we went into the holy spaces that were held in such a polarized way, and that happened not only in Jerusalem, but also in Nazareth and in Magdala. The other teaching there was exactly what we're trying, it's like she gives us opportunities to embody. And only through the embodiment, the availability really becomes real. And so that was about not placing a counter, not saying this is wrong or right, or this, I have to kind of fight this, but rather being a channel for the possibility of something else. And that also happened in my experience after a number of times, after a return. So first you see, and then you receive, and then you notice your reality. And then you are given the possibility not to respond in the usual first level way, but to be this channel that holds a different possibility. And then there is a circulation that shows more. That was my experience.
So true, yes. The walking was very powerful because of the symbology beyond, again, the physical, the creation of pathways, creating pathways between different spaces and between different dimensions. And I think it's interesting also that you mentioned Magdala, and Qumran, that's very close to Magdala. places that are outside of Jerusalem, but places where the energy of the Shekinah and the fire of the Spirit was very powerful for me as well. I think Migdal, because Mary Magdalene clearly has been there and her energy is there, her memory is there, her presence is there. Qumran, because of the caves, like it's a very unpolluted space, a space where you can very easily tune into this presence within. But interestingly, and I'm just noticing this now because you said this, for me, the energy of the Shekinah was more powerful in Jerusalem than it was in Qumran or than it was in Migdal. And I think it is because of the presence of so many people. So the fire kind of amplifies, and I know we've talked a lot about this, that when she feels that there's energy to move or there's energy to transmute or barriers to break through, that this energy, this fire energy will amplify and she will become less subtle and more like a lightning bolt or like a sword of fire coming through, realigning energies, uses this energy, uses people, vessels, channels to embody this energy and to bring it through. And when you're open to it, and I think this is something that we experienced in Jerusalem, you become this vessel of this sacred fire. And you are moved through, like at times I felt it wasn't us moving, like we were being moved through the city. And we were being moved to open portals and to open gateways and to break through some of these barriers, not because we were doing something specifically. Of course, we were singing, we were praying, we were tuning in, but that was not the important thing. The important thing was just that we were being open and we allowed this energy to come through. And this is what created the openings. This is what created the pathways.
Yes.
What for you was the strongest place or the strongest experience? Like, what did you feel about Migdal and Qumran?
So for me, I think we've kind of touched upon it a little bit. Of course, the moving through in Jerusalem, through the different quarters, experiencing all religion, that's what created kind of the strongest experience, not necessarily one particular site, but absolutely connecting to the stones there, those that have been through generations, as you said, of people coming with devotion, you know, no matter what the story, that was very, very present. And I felt that Migdal was a very teaching place as well, a very, very strong place. And there too, for me, that the presence of Shekinah was very teaching, was very present, because I don't know if you've touched upon this and I've missed it, but there is a strong polarity there as well, a very interesting kind of response to the degree of presence that is available there. And that is that upon the ruins and just upon the Sea of Galilee, where everything would have taken place really historically or biblically, there has been, I don't even know how they got the permissions to do that. There has been created this, what they call a Magdalene Center, which is a very imposing structure, very, very, very imposing structure, really feels like, you know, nothing in the shape or in the materials even allows flow as far as I experienced it. And from just a very small glance inside, the design, the robes, the behavior didn't feel very humble, didn't feel very opening, but very didactic and very kind of hierarchical. And I don't know much about that place, but it obviously is a place of some form of worship, and is very dominant in the space, and is a great contrast to the ruins of the synagogue there and of the town. And there again, I felt that there was a communication and almost a gratitude to the type of arrival that we chose to come with. So the walking through and the honoring of almost like was spoken back to. And then there was a presence that was really, really there. And when it was really there, it was possible, at least for me, to see beyond and to really come into a place of understanding and of feeling of what this place carries and how the energy would have felt before a particular before what I see before my eyes, which is playing a different story for me. So that was very strong for me there. Other sites, I mean, Nazareth was quite strong as well. It had a similar, but I felt that there was much less possibility for circulation there. And that place too had a guard at the beginning, a male guard. He even had a gun, you know, while he was kind of monitoring who went in, and that was almost, and the structure as well, the modern part of the structure really overimposed the ancient part. So it was very hard to feel the circulation there, I felt. But important to see and important to relate to, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It's important to see those things. Bethlehem was very strong as well for me, even though again it was kind of a weird experience because you're ushered in with hundreds of people at the same time, and you're kind of being pushed through the church. I remember going down into this part where the cave would have been, where according to the story, where Mary would have given birth, under the church, and then touching the ground, and we were kind of like lined up to touch the place like where she would have given birth. And undeniably there was an energy there, undeniable. And I felt like I was hit by a lightning bolt, actually, in that space, which is a similar feeling that I had in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, like this spiritual fiery lightning bolt coming through. So definitely a very strong charge that was there. But again, you had to like go through all these layers of what was physically and materially there. And I think that's part of the great teaching of that trip and of Jerusalem and of a devotional path to the Magdalene, is to really see beyond the form. And I believe that it teaches us that the Spirit and the Shekinah is present everywhere, and that we have to learn how to recognize her, how to give space to her. And to me, it's also a teaching that from great devotion can come rigidity, and can come dogmatic thinking and dogmatic structures. Like at the beginning, all of the great religions that have now created these dogmatic, rigid structures, where in many of the cases, the divine cannot flow as it would flow, or is in a way diminished by the rigidity of the structures, like the structure that you mentioned in Nazareth, this enormous concrete dome over this sacred site. It really teaches us to let go of all those structures, to not be in any dogmatic thinking. And I think as devotees of the Shekinah, or of Mary Magdalene, or the divine feminine, in any religion, in any shape or form, the most important aspect of that devotion is to be non-dogmatic and to be inclusive, and to always be ready to push the boundaries and to open up to more people, more experiences, and to accept the experience that the other is having and not try to impose a form. That's I think the key of allowing the Shekinah to live, is never imposing a form upon anything, not for ourselves and not for others. So to be in this kind of formless shape, it seems contradictory, but you can have a shape but not attached to it.
I really agree, and this is maybe touching upon our next question, but just one of the ways to receive Shekinah and then to become through it is to make things sacred. And then right away, you have the possibility to make things sacred, because then there's the availability. But it was kind of connecting, taking on from what you said, I really believe that one of the portals is to honor in that way and to make sacred. And as soon as you commit to that, because it's also available, as soon as we do that, the channel opens, and then we are also able to do that. Then it's, it's effortless, and it really does do open that channel. So
Yes, and I think it is one of the ways to really cultivate her is to be in full surrender. So surrender is an important word, and a misunderstood concept or a misunderstood word. I think it has been used by patriarchal or dogmatic systems to impose a kind of submission to dogmatic rule. To me, surrender is something completely different. It is the path of non-resistance to our own divine self and our own divine spirit. Complete devotion to the highest octave of your being, like not staying stuck in the lower layers or the lower realms, but really giving more space, believing in the highest octave of your being, to me is really the path of surrender, which means surrendering and letting go of all the obstacles, the fears that keep us from really going with that highest part of our being. So it implies really listening and believing, having faith in those messages that we constantly receive from spirit, that we constantly receive from life, and giving importance to that. And sometimes it means, well, very often in the case of the Shekinah, it means shaking things up. Like I'm sitting here, luckily no one can see my space, but I'm surrounded by cardboard boxes because I'm moving, because spirit asked me to move, and without knowing where I'm going. Yet again, I've done this several times in life, but because there's something that needs to be moved along, there's an energy that needs to move, there's a thread to connect to. So it's very much, to me, also associated with this notion of the red thread. Like we have this thread in life, and that's when we are in flow, when we're following this thread, this calling. And the Shekinah is the fire that gives us the power and the courage to follow this thread, which is our highest purpose, this thread, if we follow it. I'd like to talk a little bit about sacred chants and how it's come into this path. Maybe you can start, Perla. You're more of an expert singer than I am.
No, but I'm definitely on the path of using song more and using sound more. But more specifically for this talk, it would be about the sacred chants, and it would be about the teachings that came through the language. So as I mentioned at the beginning, I did grow up in Jerusalem, so I speak fluent Hebrew, and I read in Hebrew, and I prayed in Hebrew, and I wrote in Hebrew and did my schooling in Hebrew, but it was a very uncomfortable language for me. So at home I speak English, but the language wasn't comfortable. It wasn't welcoming. It wasn't soft. I did not enjoy poetry in that language, and some prayer, yes. And the bits that I remember as a child, and kind of where prayer became much more meaningful, were the ones that were sung, of course, because that that kind of was a space beyond words where devotion could take place through the frequency of sound. So I had the experience recently. I hope you're all hearing me. Are you hearing me? Yep. Following our trip to Israel, there was something very present, and I had the experience in the Magdalene festival that Anaïs held last summer, to meet or to experience the teachings of Lars Mull, who has studied the Aramaic language, which, as well as a child, I know how to read. I never spoke it, but I read Aramaic because some of the interpretations of the Bible, the Hebrew Bible, are written in Aramaic. And Aramaic is, even today, is a very deep language. And one of the things that were mentioned very clearly by him and about this language is that it cannot be translated so simply. One, because every word has more than one meaning, like many, many meanings and many translations. But the second one, which is very relevant, I feel, to what we're speaking about, is that the perception, it's a very ancient language. And the perception of concepts at the time and of the world, of heaven, of earth at the time was so different to how we perceive today, that when we say a word like sky or like earth, it doesn't represent what the original word represented. So that to me is extremely meaningful. And that to me is, when I heard that, I understood that the Hebrew language must have started this way, but in modern usage has been minimized and has been kind of formed into a very linear way of speaking, a very minimalistic way of using the language. And when that happened, when that realization came through to me, that's when I turned to the sacred chants. That's when I turned to the prayers, and I began to sing them and chant them and go back to these places. And it had a very meaningful experience on me. It had the same experience that I had when touching the stones in the sacred sites in Jerusalem. It took me, it felt like going way below the earth, down through the layers, into a place of truth and remembrance and knowledge and availability that was way beyond the language, the current story, the current culture, the current religion even. And from that point began this journey of sharing sacred chants.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me. For me, before the chants, the connection was there with the ancient language through the prayers, because when Mary Magdalene initiated me into her path and her devotional path, at a certain point she asked me to use the rosary. Not being from a Catholic or Christian background, I had a very preconceived idea about the rosary. And I didn't really want to connect to it. I didn't feel a connection to it, but she really insisted on it. And I'm so happy that I did today. But then I started going into the prayers that are today associated within the Catholic tradition with the rosary. And they created contraction within me. Contraction that wasn't allowing the divine to flow through me. So I thought, well, I must look beyond. I will, and I started looking to more ancient sources of these prayers. And so automatically I arrived to the Hebrew prayers and the Aramaic prayers and started looking into the meaning of the words. And the prayers just opened up. Like they flowered, they blossomed, and this very restricted meaning became a very expansive, beautiful, multidimensional prayer that was open to interpretation and that spoke to our feelings, that spoke to our sensations, that were living experiences within the body. And that's when the prayers really came to life for me. So yes, these ancient languages. There's something that I read a while ago as well by a rabbi who said that when the temples were destroyed, like the ancient temples, and we spoke about the Temple of Jerusalem, but of course, this idea of the Holy of Holies was present in the temples of Sumer, in the temples of Babylon, in the temples of Egypt. But when these temples were destroyed, and when the spirit went out of the temple and out of the Holy of Holies, this rabbi said one of the places where the Shekinah went was into the sacred texts. And I feel that when I read sacred texts and ancient prayers, but also with these sacred songs, like the Shekinah, like the text and the song is the temple for the Shekinah. And when we tune into the song, or we tune into the prayer, we bring her to life again. We enter into the temple.
Yeah, I resonate so much, so much.
And at the same time, it activates our inner temple space, like our body as a temple space, our life as a temple space. And I know we spoke about this at the last year, since you mentioned the Magdalene Festival and Lars Mool, also with Chloe and Caroline, who co-organized the festival, that we felt that what was being called for right now on this planet, and this is definitely still the case today, is that we again enter into temple consciousness, that our life is lived within temple consciousness. Like the divine is not something that is celebrated only on a Sunday when people go to church, or only when we sit on our meditation pillow and we do an invocation and we do a prayer. But our lives should be a prayer lived in temple consciousness. And that is really what we're tuning into. One other thing that I feel very strongly is when we started sharing these circles. Of course, we didn't know what the effect would be on people, but it really awakened something within them as well. And it opened the Holy of Holies. I do feel that every time we meet in circle and we share these sacred chants, the Shekinah comes in and we go into the bridal chamber, the chamber, the Holy of Holies, where this physical, the material, and the divine, the spiritual can unite and can come together.
Yeah, so first of all, exactly what you said, I resonate 100%. And we were very blessed because after having our own experiences, you know, when you share it with others, it could very well be a personal experience. But what we did is we started to share them without giving the meaning of the words to begin with. And the feedback that we received ongoing through the various circles was varied, was deep, was connected to the energy of love, was connected to the energy of opening, and for many people was taking them back to a much more ancient place. To me, this is also meaningful with regards to what we said about the language, because it's not even the language that was minimized, it's our perception of concepts in the world. Our perception of the world has been minimized. This kind of understanding, this godly form of knowing, not a tangible, kind of organized, classified, and in a way kind of separating form of knowledge, but where, you know, heaven and earth, they exist as heaven and earth, but there is a unity, there is a oneness. That is something that we kind of keep missing, right, in our current world, and is then reflected by the language. So when we share these sacred chants, what I believe is also happening is that we are slowly remembering and opening up to a much wider perception of that oneness, of that union, and of the true relationship between the polarities, or between the masculine and the feminine, which are not, you know, opposite pillars. There is kind of a constant dance, and that really happens through the chanting, I believe. Oh, I wish for that to reopen our perception, not just the language.
And it does. I see it. I see when people tune into the chants and when they tune into these ancient languages. And I think it also helps us remember, consciously or subconsciously, like that at least the cellular memory is opened and released when we're in the frequencies of these languages and these sacred chants. But yes, we open to a wider meaning, a more expansive, a more real experience of life. And it reminds us that words are spells. And in the beginning, we had this consciousness that every word we speak is a spell. We speak reality into being through the words and the language that we use. So by tuning into more expansive meanings of words and higher vibrational use of words, we lift the vibration of our physical reality and our physical experience, and we create openings to experience a more expansive reality. Yeah. And I think this might be a nice bridge to connect to our chants for tonight. You can say some words about it, and while you do that, I'll pop it in the chat so that people can join if they wish to join.
Okay. So this chant is particularly meaningful for me because it's another step in this journey. It isn't one of the songs. So initially the chants that we were sharing were taken from the songs and from the prayers. And this took place when we were together as a group in here in Italy, actually, which is where I live, but in Perugia, which is about a couple of hours away. And we were visiting churches and coming together and singing and chanting and bringing, you know, what we were speaking about, bringing a particular intention in how we receive and how we arrive at these places. And so we were in one particular church that was dedicated to Archangel Michael. And it was a circular space. And we sang some of our known prayers, and we sang the Ave Maria that we chanted at the beginning. And at some point, there was kind of an invitation, almost a natural happening between all of us, that it wasn't about singing or chanting a particular song, but we were just sounds. We were just making sounds and harmonizing with each other. And in that moment, this chant, this prayer, these words, these phrases came through to me in Hebrew. And I've never done anything like this before. I'm not a very confident musician, but I did go home after that and play it on the piano one time and register it because it felt very meaningful. And the words were about walking with and bowing to and becoming through her. And over time, this chant has become my devotional chant. When I needed to be reminded, when I felt I was constricting, I would just listen to it and I would sing it. And it really became a tool for me. And why this is so meaningful to me and why I call it the next step is because I think this is another part of temple consciousness and of the responsibility of our communication with Shekinah, which is what she kind of requires of us, is that in any given moment, no matter what the reality looks like, our intention and our relation to it is what makes it sacred or very, very low, and then comes into all sorts of, you know, polarized dramas and, you know, suppressions and depressions and all sorts of things, so depending on the situation. And that's I find that a high practice and a high teaching that is very available to us. So these words that I didn't take from an ancient prayer, but came in a way in a simple form through my life and through an offering there in the church, I feel have been able to be a devotional chant for me, and thus suddenly were received also by others in such a way. And so I feel very, very touched by the fact that we're chanting this today. So the words are here. I'll read them once so that you can kind of understand the pronunciation. And then what we thought we would do is I will sing one line and then you'll have a moment to just sing it for yourself, and then another line and you can repeat for yourself. Of course, unfortunately, we can't do it together, but each in your own rooms. And after we've done all the lines, I'll just sing it once and all together 3 times. So you just join with the full chant. We will sing it 3 times all together. So the words are lach eheye, lach eshtachave, itach elech, itach ethave, imach. So we will share the meaning after. I'll just find the tone just one moment. Okay, so here we go. לך אשתחווה, איתך אעלה, איתך אתהווה.
And we can all just take a little moment of silence just to receive the energy of the words. Thank you, Perla. Yes, after every chant, every prayer, we take some time in silence because we create the temple space, and then in the moments of silence, we really receive as well a lot. So maybe you can share now the meaning of the chant of the prayer.
Absolutely. So lach is to you in the feminine form. So you in Hebrew would have a feminine and a masculine form. So lach is to you I be. In a way, that's what it means. Eheye is to be. To you, my being. Lach eshtachave, to you I bow. Itach elech. So itach would be the feminine form of with you I walk, and through you I become. And then imach, so itach et have is through you I become. And imach is just another form, another synonym of itach.
Thank you. I've been chanting it for a couple of days now, and I feel it's powerful, and it really helps on the path of surrender. Like when we feel like we're hitting some obstacles, the chant really removes those obstacles. So it's really very powerful to bring in the energy of the Shekinah. Maybe we open up space for a couple of minutes for questions, if there are any questions or anything that you'd like to share, maybe. Anna has a question. Go ahead.
Yes. Hello. I'm experiencing a lot of things actually, and a lot about the temple, the union of masculine and feminine. And there is just when I experience masculine or the essence of things, the seeds, emanation, and then I just have sometimes like a confusion between the energy of action and the Shekinah that can be so powerful in her determination. When sometimes I have the frequency of Kali also, it's so radical. And if she's the form and the unformed, what would be the masculine? Sometimes I mix them, so I don't know if you have more details about that.
I'll let you answer after, Perla, if you feel. But for me, the Shekinah is the movement that impulses. She's the impulse behind the movement. And maybe the movement, the actual action is the masculine, but she's the impulse behind the action. She's the energy that circulates within the structure, within the vessel. I see her as a breath, as a respiration. The Shekinah is maybe the inhale, and the masculine is maybe the exhale. Like they go together. But I believe that I feel that she's really the impulse behind the spiritual fire more than the physical fire. It's just beyond the veil. She's the invisible before an impulse moves into the visible and the physical world, to me. Would you like to add anything to that, Perla?
I think I'll probably be saying more of the same, but I'm not, so my wordings is a little bit different, but I definitely agree that Shekinah, rather than being the feminine aspect as opposed to the masculine, it's the availability of the dance of both. So that energy embodies the existence and the relationship of both, therefore contains that dynamics of the movement of masculine and feminine, rather than it being the feminine and then there's the masculine aspect. So when Shekinah is present, both would be operating in their righteous way in the formation. That's how I see it or feel it.
Thank you, Anna. Any other questions? Who is Meshi? When was this mentioned? I think maybe something didn't come through at a certain point, but in the invocation, Mary. So we invoke the 4 guardians of the wheel of the Magdalene. So that's Anna, Isis, Mary Magdalene, and Mary, the last one. And then in the prayer, the Hebrew prayer, it's the last word is Yerushalayim, or Jerusalem. And again, in the idea to Jerusalem as the spiritual kingdom, the kingdom within, the dwelling place of the divine, the dwelling place of the Shekinah. Anna, Mary's mother, yes. So we invoke the lineage to bring the energy through. And actually, that's another way maybe to define again. Shekinah is beyond definition, but to give it shape in some way. She dwelled within the temple, within the Holy of Holies, and the temple allowed her to be in a certain space. So maybe the masculine can also be the creation of the circumstances that then allow her to be present and allow her to come through. Thank you, Lucia and Anna, for your question. If there are no more questions, then we will close with one Shalom Lach Miriam prayer. So you can say it with us, or you can close your eyes and just receive the prayer. So again, the words are in the chat. Shalom Lach Miriam, Meriat HaChesed, Adonai Imach, Brocha ad Banashim Uvaruch Peribitnech, Yeshua, Yerushalayim. Thank you all for being here, for sharing this moment with us. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Thank you, Perla, for sharing. And may the Shekinah be alive and present and sharing her fire with all of us and through all of us.
Thank you all. Thank you, Anaïs.